Hi, this is Andrew Sears, and I prepared a short presentation for City Vision's Advisory Council just to give you a little bit of background on why we've done the initial design on our Masters in Christian Ministry and Leadership and some of the philosophy that went behind that. But we're trying to get input from you, and we want you to better understand our context so you can provide us advice as we continue to develop this degree, because we're viewing this degree as only partially developed, and we're going to greatly expand it as we move forward, and that's what your advice is for. So City Vision really has two main program areas. So we have addiction counseling, and we have the School of Management and Ministry, which is these three degree programs. And the idea is over time, right now we have these two master's programs, and over time we want to offer these programs at each level. So as we add this master's in Christian Ministry and Leadership, we're going to rename our Masters of Organizational Leadership into a Master's in Nonprofit Management. And so just so you understand the basic framework we have for all of our master's degrees in our Management and Ministry department is we have four main competencies: ministry competencies, entrepreneurial competencies, operations competencies, and business and funding competencies. And we have different courses that map to these competencies. We have business and funding, we have ministry, we have a lot of the operations, and then entrepreneurial, and then we have the synthesis and intro courses, the strategic management. So to frame these different degrees, our MBA is equally balanced. This is framework also is called the competing values framework. It's kind of trying to give someone competency across all four areas roughly equally. The MSOL is going to be a little more focused on the create quadrant. Then the Masters in Christian Ministry and Leadership is going to be focused a little bit more on the ministry quadrant. So that's one type of framework of thinking about this. Another framework is, this is kind of a theological translation of Bloom's taxonomy, where you kind of start with the Bible, then out of that you build your core theology and doctrine, and then out of that you create your applied theology. And then you can identify your unique personal values in philosophy of ministry and identify your organization's unique values. And then ultimately, you may want to do change management. So our bachelor's in Christian Ministry and Leadership is really focused much more on this foundational, the Bible, the core theology and doctrine. And the master's is really trying to cover all these levels. But the assumption is they're coming in with a little more of this. If they don't have it, we're going to be adding more and more courses. But a big focus is going to be on this applied theology. So that's one way of framing it. Another way of framing it is actually adapting a framework that was developed by Tim Keller in Center Church. And he said, you have what to believe, and that's your doctrinal foundation, which he defines as timeless truths from the Bible about God and our relationship to Him, His purposes in the world. And that's really the theology in Bible courses. And then you have the theological vision, which he defines as a faithful, and that's kind of how to see, and in many ways this can be the why for your particular organization, a faithful reinstatement of the gospel with rich implications for life, ministry, and mission in a particular culture at a moment in history. So basically you're talking about how do you contextualize this doctrinal foundation to your particular context, where you'll have vision and values, ministry DNA, and philosophy of ministry emphases. So an example might be a theology of urban ministry. So that's how to see. And then there's what to do. And that's ministry expression. He says that's how the gospel is expressed in a particular ministry at one community at a point in time. So that's local cultural adaptation, programs and processes, organizational culture. For us, that's most of our courses. They're nonprofit courses, and that's really our strength, is we have a lot of nonprofit courses: HR, accounting, grant writing, fundraising. But a traditional Christian university in some sort of Bible theology or ministry degree might have 90% over here on this doctrinal foundation, 10% on how to see, and nothing really on how do you run the business side of your church, and HR and accounting and how to manage people. Whereas for us, we're much more focused on parachurch, and we're also much more focused on the practical. So, you know, with our courses, we already have a huge number of courses here. So with this degree, it's going to be about 70% focused on the what to do, 20% on how to see, 10% on what to believe, with the idea that people are coming in with some of that foundation. Over time, though, I think we're going to expand this for people who come in who don't have that foundation. So another way of thinking about this is how this relates to our program outcomes. So these are program outcomes are things that accreditors require, and in the summary document we'll provide more detail, but our Bible and theology program outcome relates over here. We have 4 applied program outcomes, and these map to courses: applied theology, our vocation outcome, healthy leadership, and cross-cultural ministry, and then organizational skills, which is a lot of you know, our courses. So one critical thing to understand in designing this program is just understanding who our students are. Now, we provide a summary for that in the document, but our students are primarily Bible-believing Christians who are serving the poor and the addicted in the United States. We had 269 students in 2021. We're growing at about 20%. A lot of working class, kind of bottom half socioeconomically. 74% of those who applied for aid got it. Average age 40. About 2/3 white and 1/3 people of color, with the highest proportion being black by level and organization. A lot of, you know, most of these are staff at parachurch organizations. So about 80% are. 60% of those are in lower to middle management, and 20% are in executive leadership. These are the degrees we currently have, and what percentage of our students come from there. One other unique thing about City Vision is 75% of our students are coming from partners and ministries. Most of those, the vast majority, 96% of those, are coming from parachurch ministries. So we're really focused on the parachurch side. Now, one of the other ways of framing, you know, who our audience is, so Richard Foster wrote a book called Streams of Living Water, Celebrating the Great Traditions of the Christian Faith, where he talked about there's the social justice tradition, the evangelical tradition. You know, we've kind of been at that intersection, and, you know, these days, both of these words have kind of gotten canceled by the weaponization that's happened in the world. But, you know, if you remember what these words used to mean 20 years ago before they got canceled, you know, the social justice tradition really is just a 2,000-year-old tradition of Christians who've served the poor, who have done that sometimes through charity, sometimes through social action. And really our bullseye in terms of who we serve, our one-liner is providing radically affordable online education to Christians serving those who are poor and addicted. So what do I mean whenever, you know, we're serving at this intersection? So one of our, you know, whenever we designed our addiction counseling program, we looked at a book that was called Counseling in Christianity, 5 Views, and it kind of used a spectrum of 5 different perspectives. And I've decided to translate that into some of the subcultures of the Christian social justice tradition. So I've had exposure to a lot of these subcultures throughout various points of my life, and can speak some to them. I actually grew up in white fundamentalist Christian environment, not super healthy environment, but then transitioned into white evangelical Christian ministries. And for these, you know, a lot of the people who write about Christian social justice, this is Brian Finkert, Bob Lupton, Ray Bakke, Tim Keller. These are all people, you know, they don't just write exclusively for a white audience, but a lot of the audience who reads their books is coming from the white evangelical audience. And then there's this other group I call the reconcilers. So this is, if you're at an organization that is highly multi-ethnic, Bible-based ministries, or if you consider yourself a significant part of your call as being a bridge builder. So InterVarsity Press, John Perkins is an example, the CCDA 1.0, Brendan Salter McNeil, Miles McPherson, George Yancey. This is the reconcilers. And then you have working class people of color. Part of the point of this is these are all Bible-based. This isn't like this group's more Christian or more, you know, centered on the Bible. These are all people who take the Bible very seriously. And then you have this other group that I'd call the Talented Tenth, to use W.E.B. Du Bois. term of, largely the top 10% in terms of, talent among people of color, and in his case, he's in the African American community, that are really using a lot of their gifts to bring social change. So, and this particular group is often characterized, in the writing, that's by people of color for people of color. So, a friend of mine, Sheila Rise Rowe, wrote a book on healing racial trauma that was kind of in that vein, and has written another book. Robert Chow Romero wrote Brown Church, which was excellent book. Carl Ellis has written some about Black theology, and this is more of CCDA 2.0, which is really more by people of color for people of color. And then over here you have more of the secular radical identity political movements. Now, the reason why I kind of outline these, one is I just think it's helpful for people, but the other is to recognize who are we trying to span. And this percentage is basically for our current students, where are they coming from? So, we have most, 70% of our students are in these two center groups here. 25% might be coming from the white evangelical, and then 5% might be coming from the talented 10th. So we're trying to span all four of these groups, but we're likely to most effectively serve the middle two. And a lot of our material will be a little heavy, in those middle two. Another way of framing, the Christian social justice tradition is to look at where our students are coming from, and especially through our partners. So right now, 29% of our students are coming from rescue missions. That's partly because City Vision was founded out of the Association of Gospel Rescue Missions. 28% are Christians that are a part of the Christian recovery movement. 18% are holistic missions organizations. 18% are out of the Black church, so Black students who often work in parachurch ministries. Hispanic or Latinx church, so 8%. We have a partnership with TUMI and World Impact, so that's 8%. Other Christian community development organizations and ministries, 6%, Salvation Army, 4%, and Teen Challenge. So part of why I explained that is, as you go through the questions that I've asked, be thinking about this audience that we have, and try to think about, okay, how can we best serve that audience? So thank you for being willing to serve on our advisory council. Help us with whatever feedback you can give, and I hope that you find this video helpful. Thanks.